And good evening, and I'd like to welcome you to our January 2017 meeting of the Morgan and Zoning and Planning. To kick us off, we'd like to start with a review of the November 10th, our last meeting, our Planning Board minutes. You received a copy of those or had a chance to review them. Are there any comments, corrections, deletions, omissions? Hearing none, I'll move that those are approved. Next item is a review of the city council action since our last meeting. And Philip would cover that, please.
Sure. Mr. Chairman and members of the commission, we, as you recall, at the November meeting, we reviewed a rezoning proposal for the Rutherford Electric Membership Corporation. And we reviewed that. It went then to city council, and they concurred with the decision of the planning commission and passed an ordinance to rezone that property. Since then, we have not reviewed any development proposals. We've had discussions with the corporation about different things, but we have not reviewed any development proposals for approval. Also, another matter that came before city council that didn't come before the Planning and Zoning Commission was the annexation of two parcels that Crescent Resources owns, one of which is located directly behind the Walmart neighborhood store off of North Carolina 181. That was a 37-acre tract, and then immediately across the street, adjacent to St. Mary's Church Road and 181 was another tract that was owned by the Crescent Resources. And we had been in discussions with them to annex a portion of a property that had been left off, and they wanted to go ahead and annex the remainder of their property. It was already in the ETJ and zoned, so it just went before city council for annexation, and that was adopted on Monday night.
Good. Any questions for Philip? Was there any particular future land uses alluded to during that process?
No, sir. Just that they are trying to work with developers to develop that property, and once they get one, we'll be in touch with us.
Okay, fine. Next item is appearances. This is an opportunity in our agenda for someone that might be in the audience that would like to address or comment on a planning or zoning issue that's not on our agenda tonight. Seeing no one jump up, step forward, we'll move on to new business. Single item on our agenda tonight is the alternate design proposal for landscaping to be at the Mountain View Elementary School. Philip, you want to kind of ramp us up, please, on that?
Sure. What I wanted to start out with, and you don't have in your packets, but it is on the presentation, is in your zoning code, there is a flow chart for the review procedure for a alternative design proposal. And if you wouldn't mind, I'll just kind of read over this couple sentences that tells what an alternative design proposal is. That way I think it explains what we're here to do tonight. But it states that City Council may approve an alternative design proposals that differ from the requirements of Article 4 being the landscaping, parking, and buffering requirements of this ordinance in regards to landscaping, parking, infrastructure, or building design due to unique site circumstances or creative design proposals, provided that the intent of this ordinance is met. The steps in the boxes below correspond to the detailed description of each step of the process in the following pages. So what I have done is I've clipped the steps in the process, which begin with a pre-application discussion that they have with staff to kind of hammer some ideas out, which we have done. They submit the application of the design proposal. They have a development and design services department review. And then part B of that is a technical staff review, which we bring in other departments and the applicant and any professionals that they have, which we did. We met with the school district and their architect, landscape architect and engineers. And then we have where we are now, which is the Planning Commission or Planning and Zoning Commission review and recommendation. So we have advertised much in the same way that we advertise for a rezoning. And so we're having that hearing tonight. Following that, we'll have a second notice of public hearing and hold a public hearing with city council. And then city council will make a decision, and then if there are any additional approvals as required. Anybody have any questions on that portion of it? I think this is our first one, so I wanted to just kind of go over that so everybody is familiar with the process. So with that, we'll just dive into the actual application itself. And what you see is on the screen, and we've come up with figured out a way to do a laser pointer on a screen. But if you see on your screen, I've actually highlighted it or outlined it in a light blue. No affiliation with any particular team or anything like that.
Okay, that's okay.
But that is the actual site of the school. And as you see along Sanford Drive, you have the boundaries of the River District overlay. And then you see that the entire property is within the MID district. So this picture shows you a couple of things. You see an aerial on there, and I'll zoom in here so you can see that. You see an aerial of the school as it was before it was demolished, and it has now, as you if you visited the site, you'd be aware that it has been demolished. And then you see the outline of the proposed new school. And then also on there we have, let me switch back to my pointer. We also have the landscaping plan that is the subject of our approval. This area in green, in a darker shaded green, is where the football field will be located. And then this lighter green that has the heavier green weight around it is where our proposed greenway extension would be. Now, what that would do is actually connect into the greenway system at North Green Street. So there would be a greenway connector from downtown out then over here we'll do a at-grade crossing, and you'll be connected to the remainder of the greenway at Catawba Meadows Park. The only thing that doesn't show on here is this area, and you'll see in later plans, this area in the plans will also represent a storm detention pond as part of the site development. So this is the area or the landscaping plan, and we've kind of broken it down in different sectors. And you have the area along Bouchelle Street, which is the buffer yard, which is what they have proposed. You have this area, which would be facing Sanford or the football field. There is an area here that is the rear yard screening along Alphabet Lane. And then this is the requirement for the rear building yard. This area over here being the aquatic center. And I'll go into it in more detail in just a moment. I may come back to this slide to kind of because I think this gives a good overview of what the alternative design is, but I wanted to show you.
Can we ask, is there an elevation drawing to depict where the entrance to the building or the school will be?
I do not have an elevation drawing, but unless the applicants are here, but unless I am incorrect, the entrance of the building will be on this side of the building. Is that?
Bus parking.
Oh, I'm sorry. I am incorrect. It is on this side because this is all your access and circulation in here.
Okay.
Is that the bus route?
This is on the right side.
This is the Bouchelle Street landscaping plan, and the River District overlay comes up to about approximately this area. And the one thing that I would say in these is Russ did a site plan review. We've all looked at it, and in this site plan, this meets our requirements for the base standard, and then also in the River District overlay. This is the area of the front building yard, And one thing that you will notice is that, as with the rear of the building, which you'll see on the next slide, when you think about a buffer yard or a building yard, you think about, at least I would think about maybe a rectangular style buffer. It's required to be 10 feet or whatnot. But what they have done is designed this to conform to the shape of the building, so you have the same effect as that continuous buffer, but it's just planted in a different manner. So when you see it on the ground, it actually looks it's a lot more inviting, because it's not just a standard wall that you would be looking at. And then this is the rear of the building where they have incorporated that into these courtyards in these areas. So there's not, if you had a traditional required building yard, it would just come straight across here like this, but they've actually incorporated that in to the courtyards, which provides the same effect. It's just in a different placement of material, different design rather. And then this is the area where they have proposed and worked with folks on our staff. This is the kind of the rear of house. You have a lot of your utilities, coolers and condensers and garbage disposal and all of that. And there really is a very limited amount of room that you can place buffering, so they had to alter spacing and whatnot so that they could meet our requirements and meet the intent of the code. And this does that. It's just in a different design than what would your typical design would be. And this section, and then I've got to go back to the overall for the other portion that is at variance. But this section is where that stormwater detention pond is. And part of their stormwater detention is going to be here, actually, in the parking lot. It'll be underground, and then the rest of it will be piped across the street. So that was to minimize the amount of stormwater pond that they had to use. And then they're planting a buffer that meets the basically what they have to do. They have requirements where they have to put fencing around that stormwater pond for security purposes. So they're installing landscaping and fencing that meets our requirements to buffer that security type fencing and have a continuous movement along Sanford Drive. And then it also matches what's across the street, or matches kind of the landscape or the view across the street at Catawba Meadows Park. The thing that I wanted to show you on this slide is that they do have a requirement, and you may have noticed there are no plans. If you look on this, along this side, for landscaping. That requirement, as with many aspects of this development, there is a partnership with the city from land and other aspects to this portion. In the city, I mentioned earlier about the greenway and the connection. We will be constructing a greenway, and we have funding to do so. That portion of the greenway will extend across the front of the property along Sanford Drive. And as part of that greenway development, we will be providing that required river district overlay street yard. So those are the items that are either they are, I think the language in the code was, and I think it meets all of these. One is the building. There have. Let me find the language I was looking for. They have unique design or unique site circumstances. They have creative design, and they have building design issues that they are designing this landscaping around, all of which we felt, upon review, and again, this was an interactive design session for this development, but they brought back a plan that met the intent of the code, and I think it did so in a creative way, and I think it will. We as staff think that it will complement the development in that area in general, And with that, we make a recommendation for approval.
Any questions from the commission?
Philip, what is the ETA on Greenway construction for the section that the city's doing along Sanford Drive?
We will begin construction once the school is finished. So
Okay.
that will be, I think, 2018. Is that correct? So we will not be, so as to coordinate construction efforts, we will not begin until they are finished.
Is there an idea of the proposed building is what, 100,000 square feet?
I believe that's correct.
The old structure that has been demolished, any idea what that was?
I do not, but we have representatives from the school district.
About 44,000, I think.
I got you.
I would just say that I think that the landscape plan is wonderful, and I don't have any issues at all with it, and I like that we have flexibility built into the ordinance to accommodate folks that are looking to do something a little differently, but suitable for the site and the building. My concerns about this whole project have far more to do with traffic flow patterns and safety issues than landscaping, to be honest. I live in that area. I'm very familiar with the current traffic flow there. And once, particularly with the bus queuing and the pickup queuing that's gonna happen along Bouchelle, either formally or informally, that is gonna be a very dangerous situation there. And I don't know if DOT has been called in to look at potential for traffic lights along Sanford Drive at least at Bouchelle and possibly at Alphabet. But there's gonna be some serious safety issues here. There already are. We've already had accidents there, just from construction and people coming around that corner way too fast down Sanford Drive. It's a mess.
And the greenways, crossing for the greenway will be, it will be additionally helpful if we have a crossing there for the greenway to go to the Ralph Edwards Tree Nursery, the top of Meadows.
Where is that proposed to occur?
And so I'll address both comments kind of at the same time. And, and again, we have representation from the school district who I think probably may be more familiar with the work with the DOT. But as I understand, the DOT is planning to put a traffic light in this area, or at this intersection with Bouchelle. And then we would then have an at-grade crossing for the greenway
At
at the
the
traffic light. Yes,
Okay,
ma'am.
smart. Do you know what the proposed population for this new school will be?
The school.
Please come forward and give us your name and where you reside, please.
Good evening. My name's Doug Setzer. I'm Director of Auxiliary Services for Burke County Schools. The school that we've got intended here is constructed for 800 student capacity, elementary school. We feel like probably starting out, we're gonna be at the 600 student range. DOT, we have had a traffic study done, and that's in the hands of DOT now. As far as on-campus traffic, DOT's, I forget the nomenclature they use, but they study traffic on school campuses. They have come in and talked and worked with our architect. We've got enough lanes of traffic coming in for student drop-off that we should have all that traffic on campus. It should not flow back out into the street. So our traffic study does warrant a at-grade crossing, pedestrian crossing with a light there at the corner of Bouchelle and Sanford. So we're looking at that, and we hope that, traffic will not be a problem, but we think we've done everything we can to study that and make it as least a problem as it can be.
Can I jump on a safety wagon here? I had two kids that went to the old Mountain View School, and they both walked down Moorhead Street Extension. There's never been a sidewalk that goes beyond about a third of the way down Moorhead Street. Is there a potential that the county and the city could collaborate to get something done to improve the?
We can look at that. We do have a sidewalk all the way to Sanford down Bouchelle. We've looked at it in Alphabet, but certainly I think we could look at Moorhead.
I've noticed that they've had, traffic guards there on the mornings, which is awful helpful, but again, the kids walking down the middle of Moorhead Street.
And we did have a big population that walked when the school was up and running.
And do you anticipate that, I assume, for this new school?
That's still, we're trying to determine where we're going to actually draw our students from. I know some will be from the Mountain Crest District. That school right now is about 150% capacity. We've actually got a school inside a school there, so we want to relieve that. And we want to help Forest Hill some. It's probably 115% capacity. So, but I'm sure with that area there, there will be, quite a few walkers in that.
This is a very encouraging plan from my perspective through that. The only other thing I would suggest, and this is, again, it's a DOT study thing more than anything else. Certainly the traffic light will aid things considerably, but probably we ought to encourage dropping that speed limit from the 181 light. I would suggest all the way, if it's not already, to Catawba Meadows Park entrance.
I think that's
before it
in the
goes up to
traffic
45.
study also in regards to that, so.
Great.
Yeah, I'm just concerned about the pickup queuing. I've seen at other schools, the informal queuing along the road. That's a narrow place. People park on the road already that live in that area. And there's if cars start queuing there on both sides to pick up kids, which it's hard to see that not happening, it's gonna be one-lane traffic squeezing in and out of there.
And the city of Morgan, Mr. Luckadoo and his folks have been good to work with us, and the utility folks, and we've looked at that. I don't know if you can tell it on your drawing. We've actually got 3 lanes of traffic coming in for the front, the drop-off there. Also a decel lane on the right of Bushell. Everything that we've gone through schools before and had to redo, we hope that we've thought enough that we've got it in this design, and I'm sure there may be something we missed, but we've gone over this and incorporated everybody we can think of to try and prevent these kind of things from happening.
Any other questions?
There's no plans to enlarge Bushell, widen or anything?
We did add another lane on Bushell, didn't we? Yes,
Yeah, there is.
there is. It'll be widened from the,
Because the
at least from
direction
the
from
school.
Sanford Drive looks like it probably will be adequate, but from the other direction, you have buses and so forth coming from, I guess, the downtown area, down
And I
through there.
think our traffic study recommended a turn lane on Sanford Drive coming toward the post office to turn in to keep traffic flowing, so.
And you're comfortable with these modifications in the landscaping plan?
Yes, sir.
Any other questions from Mr. Setzer? Thank you, sir.
Good, thank you.
Getting a little ahead of ourselves. Is there any other comments or questions from the commission?
None.
If not, I want to open it for public comment. Is there anyone in the audience that would like to comment on this proposed landscape plan? Seeing none, I'll close it, bring it back to the commission. Is there a recommendation? Or a motion from the commission?
Accept the plan as presented here tonight.
Okay, I have a motion to accept the alternate
Second.
design proposal and a second from Pete. Any comments, discussions? Hearing none, I raise for the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposition? Goes forward to our next city council meeting, which will be in February. Okay. Any other items for discussion tonight? Yes, sir. Nothing on that? Okay, we'll move that we adjourn.